Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Chance Winslett. I am the membership specialist for NRWA. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to start with Brad Sturkey from inCTRL. Following this session, you will automatically receive a certificate of completion and a copy of the recording. Please allow a few hours to receive these materials. You do not need to email me if you're watching this live. If you're watching this as a recording post-event, please email webinars@nrwa.org to request a certificate. Attendees, you will be muted during the presentation, but please enter your questions in the question box on the toolbox to the right, and I will answer any of the technical issues that you may have. All of the other questions will be answered during or at the end of the presentation. Thank you, and Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sweet. Thank you, Chance, and thank you everyone for joining. So today we're going to be talking about unlocking operational excellence, managing the data deluge for water and wastewater system operators. Deluge. So for anyone who needs a refresher on deluge, or how I was pronouncing it earlier, deluge, we're using it as the verb here. So inundated or overwhelmed with a great quantity of something, in this case, data. So quickly before we get started, I'm Brett Sturkey. I'm a customer success manager here at inCTRL Solutions. And in a little bit, I'll kind of introduce our product managers, Caleb and Phil, and then they'll jump into a discussion on managing the data deluge. And then we can go over questions at the end. But while Caleb and Phil are talking, please put your questions or comments in the chat. We'd love to kind of hear what or see what everyone's talking about. And if it's a good question, I can interrupt Caleb and Phil and ask the question. They don't mind if I interrupt them. So I think before we introduce them, I do have one poll to get a little knowledge about everyone who's joined today. So, all right, I think everyone should see that. Caleb, Phil, can you confirm?
Yep.
Cool. So, yeah, so what is your line of work, company and job? Water distribution operator, wastewater or sewer operator, circuit rider, or city manager or local government board member, or other. So if you're a race car driver or a bank teller, you could maybe if you select other, you can put it in the chat. That way we can still know.
Yeah, throw it in the chat if you selected other. We'd love to know what line of work you're in.
Yeah, I'll just go type in the chat here too. So hopefully everyone saw me say hello in the chat. Did you guys see that? All right. Oh, so we have an engineer. And what about 75% voted? I'll give it a couple more seconds. It's changing. People are changing their answers. All right, I'm going to close it out. Final answer. Oh, we have a conservation specialist. Nice. And share. And now you guys can see the results. Caleb, Phil, Jacqueline, you guys see the results?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Thank you, everyone, for answering that. So I'm going to go ahead and progress to the next slide. Phil, Caleb, floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks for joining today. It's great to have the opportunity to share with all of you. My name is Caleb Cash. I am one of the product managers for our opsCTRL product, which we'll talk about a little bit today in the course of our presentation. My focus is on plant operations. For the last couple of years, I've worked here at inCTRL. I worked with many different plants, both large and small, water and wastewater, helping them to improve their operations through data and software and improved processes. I also had the opportunity to go to NRWA National Conference out in Denver. That was my first exposure to the National Rural Water Association And it was a great experience. I met a lot of great people there, really enjoyed that. And so I'm excited about having some time to spend with you all today.
Hi, I'm Phil Lander. I'm another product manager for the opsCTRL software. My background, I've been in the water treatment industry for over 15 years. I spent most of my time in remote monitoring and process support. And now what I do is work a lot on the data side of our product. So calculations and functions and improving the data inside the platform. What you'll find today is a lot of the discussion, the context that we're using is opsCTRL. This is our software. So very briefly what it is cloud-based operations intelligence platform. It empowers operators to centralize your data from different data sources so that you can optimize processes and convert insights from the software into operations.
So as we dive into our discussion today about managing the data deluge or deluge, maybe we should make it a drinking game. Every time someone pronounces it differently, you take a drink of water.
I think
of course,
you and Phil should say it more times so you can say it the most.
Okay. Well, questions you might have in mind about managing your data. What are the best practices for managing my data? How can I get more value out of my data? Every plant I've been to collects a tremendous amount of data, but a lot of them I think struggle to really get value or insights from it. So we'll talk about that today. And we're going to walk through a real life case study of how we've helped some of our customers unlock the value of their data and translate that into better operational outcomes.
So as we go through the slides, probably the most important thing, more than software capabilities, really is to think about your why. Why do you want to spend the time and effort to manage data efficiently and effectively with the work that you do? So we put some of the feedback that we've got from other customers on the slide here, just to prime the pump, to get you thinking about your why, but really it's personal to whatever it is you're doing with your plants. But some of them are putting together regulatory reports, can be like a monthly science fair project, or you get so many alarms, but you really can't tell what's changing from one day to the next, or you can't be everywhere at once. So you need help getting more proactive amongst a wide net of where you need to be.
So before we dive into our case study, I want to give a little bit of a framework to help us think about data and what it takes to start getting value out of our data, because there's a journey involved. In the IT world, the information technology world, there's a really common framework called the data pyramid. And it kind of walks you through step by step what you need to do to get to the point where your data is helping you to make better decisions, to operate better. At the base level of the pyramid, you just have the data itself. It's raw, unprocessed facts and figures. And if you take a second and look around your office, you're probably surrounded by data. It may be a clipboard you use on your daily rounds to write down different lab readings or meter readings. It could be standard operating procedures that are sitting on a shelf somewhere, maybe collecting dust. Or at every plant I've ever been to, there were lots and lots of Excel workbooks. And each of these represents data. Some of it is quantitative data, some of it's more qualitative data, like standard operating procedures. But when your data is distributed in a lot of different formats and different mediums, paper versus Excel versus your clipboard, it's really hard to get any insights from it. You can't really ask questions of it. To do that, you really have to progress to the next layer of the data pyramid.
So the next layer is what we call information. So the information layer is about adding context to data. So the context can be a few things. It can be in relation to space, so how a plant is laid out, sort of like the picture of the tank that you see on the screen. We've got it laid out. The data is now in terms of context of how that tank is built. It could be centralizing data, so taking data from multiple data sources and bringing it together and giving context to parameters that way. It could be in context with time. So plotting data on a time series chart gives you a sense of how something has changed over time. So all of these sort of context-based improvements are what the information layer is all about. Units of measure too, adding units.
Once you've gone through the effort Phil talked about of centralizing your data, getting it all in the same place, the same central database for lab data, field data, you name it, connected data. And once you've given it that context, you can start to do the fun part, which is where you can analyze the data, you can start interpreting it and uncovering patterns and trends and relationships. And at this level, you are starting to develop knowledge. You're developing knowledge about what's going on. You're deriving it from the data. The example above is from our software. We have the ability in opsCTRL to analyze sensor signals and determine if there's something wrong with them, if the sensor is frozen, or maybe if it's starting to drift and give you inaccurate readings. This is a knowledge that you're gaining from your data that you wouldn't have had otherwise. If all you had was the data points individually, you would have no insights. But once you've gone through that effort Phil talked about, then you start to get knowledge, and that knowledge prepares you to make better decisions.
And then the final layer is wisdom. And quite simply, wisdom is knowing what to do. In any situation where you need to make a decision, and the decision could be action of a certain kind, it could be inaction, deciding that doing nothing is the right thing. But it's really predicated on having the layers underneath complete, so that you are armed with the best knowledge possible to know what to do. And if you want to think about what that might look like, think of Yoda from Star Wars.
Which is the copyright of Lucasfilm and Disney, and we're not intending to infringe on it. So nobody telling us.
No lawsuits here.
Yeah.
I do have another poll I would like to ask the audience here. Let me do that now. All right. So how do you interact with data in your day-to-day work? You guys can see this, right?
Yep.
All right, yep. So collecting data in your daily rounds, or reviewing trends to understand performance, compiling data for regulatory reports, reviewing or collecting lab data. Again, of course, others. So if you have other, which I see we've got 20% have selected other, please tell us what that means. How are you interacting with data? A lot of reviewing trends to understand performance. A lot of compiling data for regulatory reports, looks like. Give it a couple other more seconds here. And a lot of people saying other. Does anyone want to expound upon other? No one wants to chat. Okay. All right. I will go ahead and close this. Oh, all of the above. Maybe we should have all of the above. That's why. Thank you, Dale. Okay, closing the poll. Thank you, everyone. And for interest, I'll share those results. Sweet. Okay, Caleb?
Yeah, as we continue, the data pyramid, I think, is a really helpful framework, but it's pretty conceptual. And I think it'll be helpful for us to talk through a real example of what this looks like. And Coyote Valley is a little Indian reservation out in Northern California that Brad and I got to visit this past November. And it's a team of 2 operators running both a water and a wastewater plant. So they have a couple wells, they pull water from those wells and treat them with a reverse osmosis system. They're also running a containerized MBR unit for their wastewater. So we spent 3 days with them. It's a great experience. And over those 3 days, we were able to help them with quite a bit in terms of improving their operations. You can see some of the things we did on this slide. We set up a lot of alarms for them to help them to monitor their plants remotely, because those 2 guys couldn't always be at each of the plants. we standardized and digitized 13 of their operating procedures to help them operate the equipment with consistency in accordance with the manufacturer's warranty. And what we're going to be spending most of our time on here today, we were able to reduce their manual data management activities by 75%, saving them hours and hours each week, which for a team of 2 guys who are working long hours is really, really important for them. So let's dive in. As Phil mentioned earlier, it all starts with your why. What do you need to get out of your data? And for Coyote Valley, it was a couple things. They needed to understand what was going on at their plant. They needed to be able to communicate with each other about what they had done at the plant during their shift. And at the end of the month, they needed their reports ready to send out. And so we established these as kind of their why for what they need out of their data management. And the next step is mapping out their processes of how they're getting there today and making sure we really understood that. So you can see 3 different activities there in those sticky notes of how they were managing their data. Every day they would walk around the plant Monday through Friday and collect a bunch of different readings for their water plant. Based on those readings, they would do some manual calculations on their phone. You know, they write the numbers down on their clipboard, do some quick math on their phone, write the results, and copy those results to their logbooks. At the end of each week, they would copy those results into their Excel spreadsheet, because the Excel spreadsheet was how they generated their report at the end of the month. And in addition to that, it was also where they had the flexibility to plot trends and graphs so that they could really understand their processes. Because although they had an HMI and they had a SCADA, it wasn't that flexible, and it didn't really give them the data in the format they needed to make informed decisions. So Excel was their friend. That's the same reason that in that second row of sticky notes, you can see there, they were writing down a lot of numbers from their HMI screen. Again, they were just copying down from the HMI of various pieces of equipment, writing some things in the logbook, and then copying it back to that Excel master spreadsheet so that they could get the trends they needed and have the numbers they needed at the end of the month for their reports. The final component of their reports was their lab sampling schedule. They were sampling at both the water and the wastewater treatment plant, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, send those off to the lab, do some of the tests in-house. For the ones they did in-house, they would, of course, write those on a clipboard, copy them to Excel, and then for the ones they did at the lab, they would have to wait till the results got back and then go back and put them in Excel. And in total, we added it up and we found that they were manually recording over 100 data points on a clipboard every single day by hand. Every day they were doing over 20 calculations on their phone and writing down the results again. And at the end of the week, they would copy over 500 data points from their clipboards to Excel, something that took them hours. So it was quite a burden on that 2-man team. And next, we'll talk to you a little bit about how we were able to reduce that.
So in this example here, this is one of the spreadsheets they were using. It's basically their master spreadsheet. And what you're seeing transposed on top, you'll see a bunch of quills. These are like the old school pens that they used in the dark ages.
They didn't have those at Coyote Valley. They had normal pens.
They had normal pens.
Yeah.
So everything on the sheet was a manual entry. So they would just write it all down. But the truth is, some of these data points were available from sensors from their PLCs. So if you look at sort of the top there, we've superimposed Wi-Fi icons where sensors were available. So we connected the data side so that they don't have to enter those anymore. And then underneath, you'll see calculator icons. These are values on the sheet that can be calculated. So they don't have to enter those anymore either. So this is what optimization looks like, reducing the effort and still coming up with the same result. So while we're talking about connected data, I'll tell you a little bit more about how it works in our platform. So to be most efficient, data collection automatically is the backbone of efficiency in the platform. So we have years of experience connecting PLCs, SCADAs, OPC servers, and LIMS database.
Pump stations, anything.
Yeah. So as this is a cloud-based platform, it all goes to AWS. So it's Amazon Web Service. That's our secured partner. They help us out immensely actually with security to make sure everything is safe. But as you know, it's really a universal problem. Everybody has to deal with security on water plants as soon as something is connected to the internet. So it's not particularly easy sometimes, but since we've been doing it for a while, we can have those discussions with your IT people. We're happy to partner with the IT people and have technical-based conversations with them. And we're also able to customize solutions. So it completely depends on the network structure that exists at a site, what the right solution is. But what you see down below is a typical solution where we put a standard piece of hardware. So we call it or it is called an eWon, made by HMS. That's the blue box you see in the very top right of the screen. That actually does the data logging. It has connectors to pretty much anything. And as long as we secure it properly, it can pull from the operational data and then securely send it up to the cloud. We're happy to help. So working with your IT people, we can procure it, we can configure it, we can maintain it. Really, we just need help with plugging it in. So really, in short, this is your best way to get the data side working for you and minimize the effort you have to do in manual entries.
Yeah, bringing in your PLC data is a really big step in centralizing your data, which is part of getting to that information layer of the data pyramid we talked about. But as you know, there's also a lot of other types of data that you're not going to be able to bring in from your PLC or your HMI. There's field data, there's lab data, and there may also be some data points in your HMI that you want to record manually, even though it's in the HMI. Maybe you just want to make sure somebody has their eyes on it every single day, and so you want them to record it. And for that, we always recommend a digital solution for recording data. And that's just because there's a lot you can do with the digital solution that you can't really do with the clipboard. Clipboards are great because you can always just pick them up, write on them. They're super reliable, right? But they have their drawbacks. For one, there's a lot of extra work in managing all your data with pen and paper. As we saw with Coyote Valley, they were writing down 100 data points per day, doing 20+ calculations, copying all of it to Excel at the end of the week. You can eliminate all of that work if you just record it through a digital solution in the first place. Another issue we found with Coyote Valley was that they had a decent number of errors as they were copying their data from clipboard to spreadsheet. In the course of our normal onboarding, we'll typically upload some historical data to someone's opsCTRL account just so that they can, have some trends to start working with. That's part of what we do in each onboarding. It's not something we charge for or anything like that. But as we were importing the year of data from Coyote Valley, we found dozens and dozens of instances in which the data in their master spreadsheet was off by a factor of 10. And it's totally understandable how that would happen. Humans make mistakes, and if you're copying 500 data points a week, every now and then you're probably going to add an extra 0 by accident. But a digital solution, not only is it more efficient, but it also helps eliminate those errors. There's a lot of different solutions on the market. They probably all have different ways of tackling that. For opsCTRL, we integrate some basic error handling into all of our workflows. So for example, here you see the little red error message warning the operator, hey, you've probably entered an extra number. This is outside the expected range for this value. Something we help them set up during the normal setup process. Workflows are also useful for other types of activities. If you flip to the next slide there, Brad, it seems like everywhere we turned, we were finding an opportunity to use one. One example is their total suspended solids test. This is, a type of standard procedure they would do, and they were doing it pen and paper, recording the results, doing the math with a calculator, writing it on the clipboard, all those things, and we cut out all that extra work. And we ensured that it was done with consistency, even if they brought in a new team member, because it was documented step by step how to do each step. All they had to do was enter the tare weight, how much the filter weighed before they started, and then the final weight, how much it weighed after they poured the MLSS through it and baked it in the oven for a couple hours. And it would just spit out their TSS number automatically. So it saved them a lot of work, reduced some errors there. The next workflow you see is one of the workflows they use to input their lab samples. When they get their samples back from the lab, they just pull up their workflow, type them in, and now that lab data is centralized. Again, that idea of getting to the information layer of the data pyramid. And one other way in which I think that digital solutions help take you beyond the clipboard is that they unlock a lot of different types of data that you can record. Now with the clipboard, you can record quantitative data, you can write down numbers, but a digital solution unlocks the ability to record qualitative data. So not only can you say, the pH level was 7.2, you can also add pictures or videos. If you hear a funny noise as you're inspecting the blower, you can record it so someone else can have a listen. Or if the foam on top of your aeration basin looks a little weird today, you can document that. Digital solutions really offer a lot of flexibility in the types of information you can collect.
All right, so let's move on to the next layer of the pyramid, which I find a little more fun. So now we're getting into knowledge. Something that Caleb and I do a lot of as product managers is talk to customers about what they need. And something that has resonated quite clearly is that a lot of the needs are very practical. Practical needs for making calculations of the data to basically make up for gaps in visibility to the plant. So not so much like fancy functions or AI or anything like that, but really the starting point is the practical stuff. So here is an example of a function that we built that's available to any customer on calculating tank volumes and chemical consumption. So you can see in the picture, this is a tank. This is a chemical storage tank. And what the operations team does is measure the level every day. So they go in and measure the level. So we actually incorporate into the software a library of tank shapes, including some of the harder to calculate ones. And the software will convert that level into the volume based on the dimensions. And then we can also set the program to monitor the difference in level on a daily basis or whatever interval is useful to you. So in this case here, we take that manual input at the very top, the level, and then we calculate the usage in both level and in gallons. So now we've upgraded the data into the knowledge sphere by having a daily usage of, in this case, micro-C in the wastewater plant. And so now it's a lot easier to see how your consumption is going. Some of the other, actually, if you go to the next slide, Brad, this is a little bit more on our tank level function. It's a little bit on the configuration. You see on the left-hand side, you can see all the shapes that we use. And basically all you have to do is you enter the input tag, which is your level. What are the units? What is the shape? And what are the actual dimensions of the tank? And it will do the rest for you. So this is, we found actually this one was surprising to us how useful it was to a lot of customers, because this kind of math is even difficult to do in the PLC, and some of it is difficult to do in a spreadsheet. The next function that was requested a lot was totalizer. So this is something that's often done in the PLC, but depending on, you might not even have a PLC, but depending on the equipment you're using, you might just have a flow rate. And if you look at the top graph, which is the flow rate, it's kind of hard. You can't really look at it and say how much flow you made that day. So that's the value of a totalizer. You can take flow rate data, the instantaneous data, and then the function will go through a day or whatever interval you want and segment it into little small snippets of time, just like the PLC would, and then add them up for the day. So you can basically convert that instantaneous flow rate into a daily flow total, which is great for daily plots. It's great for reporting, or you can actually use it as base data for more advanced functions. And then the third one that we got a lot of feedback on is what we call accumulator. So you see the chart on the top left. This is a signal that is accumulating over time. And so some of the things in the plant that accumulate over time, so it could be an actual flow totalizer that does not reset. It could be runtime hours of a pump or a blower, or it could be an energy meter. So the goal here is, again, to put this to something on a daily basis so that you get a sense of how things are changing day by day, something that's really hard to read off of that graph. So again, from here, we can get a daily total of flow or runtime or energy, and then use that for other purposes. So you can use it just in charting, or you can use it in reports or other things. So we actually have a bunch more functions, more than we're going to get into today. But this, I'm just going to repeat what we found is sticking at the practical level is what has been most valued by the operations teams that we work with.
Once you've gone through that effort of consolidating your data and automating all your calculations and functions to actually get to the information you need, you get to the knowledge layer, and then you can start putting it all together to make better decisions. This is where you start leveraging your data. And we'll share a couple of simple examples from Coyote Valley of how they did that. First, at their water plant, they have a couple wells that they can pull from, and they also pipe in water from a nearby city called Redwood Valley. And they're tasked with keeping a 50-50 blend of water from their wells and water from the nearby city. But for them, with their old data collection, data management processes, they couldn't really tell in the midst of a week how they were doing on keeping a 50-50 blend, whether or not they need to run the RO unit more or less, what they needed to do to adjust the booster pump. They'd have to wait until the end of each week when they copied everything into Excel to kind of see how that week had gone so that they could adjust for the next week. And so they only had 4 data points throughout the month to act on. With opsCTRL, whenever they put the data in the workflow and they hit save, it immediately updates their dashboards. So day by day, they were getting instant feedback on how they were doing and tracking towards their goal of a 50-50 blend. And they could have instant view of how much water was in that finished water tank, how much water was in the raw water tank. They could compare their manual readings with their automatic readings, and they didn't have to rely on that old workbook anymore. This is a dashboard they could pull up on their phone through our app or on any computer they were at. It wasn't just limited to the one operator's computer who had the master Excel workbook on it.
This next example is again about applying the right context to solve a problem or get the answer to a question using a custom dashboard. So it's nice to be able to tell your own story, to be able to put the elements that you want to see all in one place, to be able to see what you need to see and make the right decision. So in this case, this is about a membrane plant. And for anybody that has run membranes before, basically the big decision you have to make in operating is when to clean, what the cleaning interval is going to be. And like most decisions, there's a big trade-off. To do a clean, you've got to take the system down, you've got to accept some downtime, you've got to pay for chemicals, you've got to pay for hauling, and there's just a whole bunch of work involved. So you want to make sure you're making a good decision on when to clean. Conversely, you don't want to ruin your membranes. They're actually quite expensive, so you want to make sure you're cleaning enough. So in this case here, the operators put everything they needed to make that decision on the dashboard. In this case, the key or the KPI of most importance was permeability. Generally, when the permeability of the membrane, permeability is basically when fouling goes up, permeability goes down. So when it gets to a certain amount of fouling, you trigger a clean. But there's a whole bunch of context you need to see as well. You know, what was the TMP, what was the flux, what was the mixed liquor. So the operations team decided this is the view that they wanted so that they could see this, every few days or once a week and make the right decision on cleaning. So The key here really is context, putting it all together in a visual way so it's easy to see, and you can stay in that proactive zone instead of sort of getting behind the 8-ball and having to do something that you don't want to do.
One final example of how they were able to leverage their data strictly for reports and dashboards was just automating that monthly report. Rather than having to go through and collect all the data at the end of each month, they just get one email at the end of the month that gives them all the information they need to submit their reports. This is something we do, partner with plants to help them produce their regulatory reports. So you can kind of cut out that science fair project Phil was talking about earlier and just get the data you need, review it, and then submit it however your state requires. Reports and dashboards are great. They're great decision-making tools. They really help people to understand what's happening at their plant. But there's other ways you can leverage your data to go deeper into your operations, like alarms and maintenance. The great thing about a digital tool is if you pick the right one, it opens up a lot of possibilities for you. opsCTRL, in addition to having the dashboards and the reports, it also has maintenance modules, and it has an asset management module and alarms module. And so you can start to form these powerful connections between your data and your operations that really help you run your plant better. A really simple example is just the flexibility to control your own alarms. Rather than just relying on whatever was set up in the PLC or the HMI whenever the integrator came out, you can make your own alarms. You can do custom logic, add, subtract, multiply, divide, use any of those tags you created through the functions Phil was talking about, and create your own alarm rules based off of them. And we have lots of options there to configure how the alarm behaves, like adding trigger delays to avoid nuisances, or re-triggers to make sure critical alarms can't be ignored. You can also integrate your alarms with your maintenance to make sure that things aren't falling through the cracks. One example we see quite frequently is people trying to make sure that their sensors are sending them valid data. And so they'll often have their online sensor, in this case, an ammonia analyzer, and they'll also do checks against it, where they'll do a grab sample and test it and see what the result is and compare that to the online measurement to see if their sensor is well calibrated. opsCTRL makes all that much easier. All you have to do is just plug in the manually collected value into a workflow. It uploads it, automatically compares it to the online measurement, and it can trigger an alarm, and it can trigger a work order to tell someone if the ammonia analyzer needs to be inspected. So that's what you're seeing here, an alarm that would trigger if the difference between the online measurement and the manual measurement was too high. And on the next one, Brad, is actually a work order that would trigger in the maintenance module, requesting someone to go out and do a visual inspection of the ammonia analyzer. There's lots of other examples we could go into, but that is just a little bit of an overview and hopefully gives you some insight into how you could start to leverage your data to get to a point of having better operations.
Sweet. So I'm looking at the time here. I'm going to go ahead and push our last poll. And so this is on regulatory reporting. So how often do you or your team have to submit regulatory reports? Does it say monthly, quarterly, or annual basis? Or perhaps maybe your team is not responsible for regulatory reports?
Yeah, maybe we should ask, how much time does it take you to pull together your regulatory report?
I know. You can do that
Put
in
it in the
chat.
chat if you want to. And we'd love to hear how much effort it is for you to pull yours together. It's really awesome to see the different ways operators come up with to pull their reports, because most of the time it's quite clever. Working with really limited tool sets, they come up with really clever ways of getting the data they need quickly. So if you want, throw in the chat how much time it takes you to pull yours together.
And we're getting close here with everyone. It looks like monthly is the most prevalent, and then Dale, of course. And this is another good all of the above. We missed it again, Caleb. We should have added an all of the above because there's probably some instances where you're doing monthly, quarterly, and annual.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. share those results. Sweet, thank you. Okay, so does anyone have any other questions? Please throw them in the chat if you have any questions for Caleb and Phil. If anything, you've learned a new word today, deluge, deluge.
Deluge.
Or feedback is fine too. Doesn't have to be a question per se. Or something that you've experienced in the digital space that you found useful or not useful in your own travels. That would be useful too.
Favorite Star Wars character? Well, how can you improve your operations with better data management? You can always text Deluge to my phone number, or Deluge. You can text demo to my phone number here, 803-493-2378. And we would love to dive in and show you our software on how we can help operators better manage their data.
I can hear your phone exploding right now.
It's ringing off the hook.
No, seriously, we love to help operations teams with this. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. And not to pitch too hard to you, but all the things we talked about with Coyote Valley, that onboarding work of helping them progress through the data triangle so they could use their data, we walk each step of the way with each of our customers. Brad does a great job helping with onboarding. We do most of the manual setup work at no charge to get people up and running, because there's a lot of work involved, and we know operators are busy. They don't have a lot of time to sit around playing with software, so we're there to support you every step of the way.
Here's a question for you. What was the longest problem you have encountered in the operations control?
The longest problem.
I mean, I think if I just interpret that a little bit, one of the toughest problems that we do have to deal with is connectivity. So connectivity is challenging, not so much on the technical side. Usually all the technical problems are quite solvable, but it is the orchestration of all, like, the people and the things and the planning. So that can be a bit challenging. I'm not sure if that's exactly your question, but it just takes patience and effort. But knowing that it's usually a one-time thing. So focus on it, get it done, and then it's usually smooth sailing after that.
All right, what about the longest or most complex equation we've solved for an operator?
Oh man, we'll get 4 or 5 data tags deep. You calculate one thing as a building block to build another thing.
Right.
I've kind of lost myself in some of the equations. I couldn't tell you how long.
Our most advanced function that we have in the data science space is what we call controller performance monitoring. So this is where we look at a PID controller on a PLC, and we monitor the difference between the set point and the controlled value to see how well the loop is running. We have a bunch of analytics underneath that monitor the effectiveness of the loop. So how well basically are the tuning parameters at keeping the control where it's supposed to be. And we have a benchmark, so we basically have a number. This is good, bad, average, and also have a recommendation for new tuning parameters. So this is something that's actually well above my head, but we have a strong data science team that works on control. So they've built this, and that has been really helpful in taming some facilities that just have challenges in control.
All right. Another question I see, what size plants do you typically work with? We work with all size plants. I mean, hopefully I'm allowed to say some names here and I won't get in trouble, but some of the largest ones we work with, like Denver Metro, very, very large, you know, one of the largest in the country, all the way down to operations teams, like two-man teams, like the one at Coyote Valley, who are running some containerized systems. So our customers kind of run the full gamut. And the software really can help any plant, regardless of its size. Bigger plants tend to have a lot of other software they're also using, so they don't necessarily need all the ops control modules. Whereas for smaller plants, you know, they may not have an asset management system and a maintenance management system. So it's kind of nice to have it all in one in something like ops control.
Here's another one. Have you encountered a conflict from customer and producer company, and how did you resolve the conflict as a third party?
Producer, would that be like the equipment manufacturer?
That's what I'm thinking. So
I would think so too.
Yeah. We do work with some equipment suppliers pretty closely, and at times they can be a little bit at odds, and we've found that having a digital tool that allows both of them to get on the same page about the actual data, what's actually happening, is really helpful in resolving those conflicts. Because it's no longer a question of he said, she said. You're both sitting there looking at the exact same data, and it starts to make it more of a collaborative problem-solving session, and takes it away from being more of a blame session.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, we work with a lot of equipment suppliers, and the thing that the equipment supplier wants is customers. So the reason basically that a supplier, equipment supplier, invests in digital software like this is because they want a bridge to their customers. They want happy customers. They want fewer warranty claims. They want reference sites. They want referrals. They want all of those things as an equipment supplier. So the assumption really is that it's all in good faith. They want the customer to be successful because they want customers. So to what Caleb is saying, generally speaking, both sides want the same thing. They want the water treatment plant to run successfully. So it actually becomes a good conduit for success when both sides are acting in good faith, which is generally what we see.
Good question. These are all good questions. Keep them coming. Got 10 more minutes.
Here's one. Phil, you can probably answer this one. Can you integrate it with other systems to centralize data?
So we have done custom integrations on a per need basis. So our software team, like for example, we've integrated a LIMS database into a data flow, or we have a reporting API that will output to serve, say like Power BI or Tableau. But basically it's on an as needed basis to just make something fit. So we are standard software, but we do custom work like that as a need arises. Because what we have found is most integrations really are custom anyways. There's not really such thing as a universal integration.
Yeah. I see a question from Karen. Do you work with distributors or local installers? The answer is yes, we do have some distributors, but you typically don't need a local installer. That's one of the benefits of ops control. You don't need an integrator to come out to get you started. Our software is a subscription fee, so you just pay on a monthly or annual basis, and it is included the onboarding. And we can do that onboarding remotely for free, or we can come on site, which isn't necessary, but is often helpful. And in that case, there is typically a fee just to cover the cost of our travel and stuff like that, like when we went out to Coyote Valley. But you typically, yeah, it's due to the ease of the installation to eWon, exactly. We can ship you the eWon pre-configured with just really simple instructions of how to plug it in. So typically, there's not really a local installer required. Occasionally, you may need an electrician, depending on what kind of panel you're connecting to.
Yeah. Yeah, generally it goes inside the control. If you're connected to PLC, so that would be like a smaller installation. It goes right on the 24-volt DIN rail, and then so that's power, and then Ethernet from the control network. If we're doing SCADA type work, it sort of just depends on what the communication is.
A good question from Karen. Does your product offer remote control?
We do have solutions for remote controls. It's not part of our standard ops control offering. Most organizations are really hesitant about remote control because the security risk presented there. But yeah, through our stack of technologies we use, including ops control, we can offer the ability to do remote controls of equipment, or maybe Phil, you can talk just really briefly about our controls packages we offer through our consulting business.
Yeah, maybe just one step back is that remote control that we do offer is like remoting into your HMI or SCADA. So it's not push button control from ops control itself. It is like a separate path in that we can use through some of the hardware that we use. And then additionally, what Caleb just kind of prepped me for is our data science and modeling team. They do advanced control solutions on the premise of the facility. So for example, advanced aeration control is fairly common. So this might be looking at ammonia and controlling the DO to an ammonia spec. So we would run a modeling, we call it on the edge, but basically it's on premise, and then control set points directly from our software to basically save the energy that the customer is looking for. So we do that kind of work as on a project basis.
Good questions, Karen.
And just to note, we are always looking to expand our network of distributors. So if any of you are with engineering firms or distributors and you're interested in a product like ops control, we'd love to talk with you about a partnership.
Is there anything the software can do to help with compliance regarding lab results? For example, if an operator records a value that is non-compliant and is unaware of it, is there anything the software can do to help with this?
That's a great question. I think, especially when you're new, it's hard to keep track of even what your permit is to know if you're in violation. And if all you have is a clipboard as your tool and you're just writing numbers down, it's not really helping you to interpret the data you're recording. So the answer is yes, we do have some ways through our digital workflows that we mentioned earlier, where you can add conditional logic so that it shows you not just here's a spot to record your data, but it gives you instant feedback on the data you're recording. So if you have a permit that requires you to instantly report if your ammonia is above X, and you type in a number above that value, it can give you a warning, an alert on the spot to say, you know, this ammonia level is reportable immediately, and it can trigger a separate work order for you to report that. So great question, and yeah, digital solutions really help with things like this.
That might be it for all the questions. Anyone else? A couple more minutes. If not, you can always go to inCTRL.com, learn more about inCTRL solutions and our other software or consulting offerings, as well as what we discussed today, our ops control facility software. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Caleb and Phil, going through that. I think we can close it out.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you guys to everyone presenting their great information. All live attendees, you'll automatically receive a certificate of attendance. If you're watching the recording, you can email webinars@nrwa.org to request a certificate. Thank you, and everyone have a great day.